Good evening. I'd like to now call to order the September 12th, 2022 meeting of the East Penn School District Board of School Directors. Will you all please rise and follow me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Our first item of business tonight is request to address the board. There are 4 members of the public who are going to speak tonight. Before we begin, I have something I'd like to read for you all. For those of you who may be unfamiliar with public comment, speakers should feel free to express their opinion, comment, or question, and understand that this is not an interactive engagement with the board or with the administration. Please direct your comments to the chair. Be respectful, not engage in profane rhetoric, and be mindful that others, including students, may be listening. I would request that you consider that protocol when making your comments. For the members of the audience, please also be respectful and refrain from speaking during the public comment period. With that, I will now announce each speaker and their topic. You step up to the podium, again state your name, and you will have 3 minutes within which to speak. Our first speaker tonight is Ms. Mary Ellen Jackson, here to talk tonight about a parent group.
Good evening. It's nice to see everybody, and I just want to first start by saying welcome back to all the teachers and staff and anybody who's listening online, and thank you all for a good first 2 weeks of school. My children are in high school, 11th and 12th grade, and they really, I think teachers are knocking it out of the park, and I think that the back to school night the other night at the high school was really fantastic. It was well attended, and so I just want to say gratitude again to everybody for doing such amazing work. I brought tonight an update. Throughout the summer, I had been talking about a group of parents who were getting together to talk about belonging in East Penn school districts, and we've formalized this group over the last couple of months. The name of the group, we're hoping we can get sponsors, PEEPS, and it stands for Parents for Equity in East Penn Schools. Right now, it is currently, there's a steering group of 4 parents, and we're trying to get somebody from each of the schools in the East Penn School District to be on this steering group. Our mission is to provide a space for parents to come together and unite for kindness, courage, and inclusion in order to help foster belonging in the East Penn schools. We have 3 goals in mind. One is to be a resource for the community members to help them get involved and be included in district initiatives. We're working on figuring out how to distribute a monthly newsletter highlighting some things that happen at different schools. Bringing things together than each school kind of siloed individually. We're also going to be holding a monthly PEEPS event. Number 2, our second goal is to support and collaborate with the district to make sure all kids feel a sense of belonging at school. And we also want to be considered a resource. If you need parents to volunteer to be on committees, you could ask us if there's anybody in our group that would be interested in a certain topic. And then our third goal is to foster inclusive relationships for families to share stories and feel supported and welcome. And we're trying to figure out this welcome thing for new parents, if we can help the schools in any way, welcome people into, not just in their neighborhoods, but overall. We actually have a Facebook group right now. You can look it up, and the Facebook group is a place for positive and informative discussions. And like I said, we're going to have a monthly PEEPS event for parents to actually connect in person. And our first event is actually going to be on Sunday, September 25th, from 11 to 1 at Nowhere Coffee in Emmaus. So if anybody wants to put that out there, we keep advertising it in our Facebook page. We have about 45 people in the group, so we'll keep you posted. But thank you for letting me have the time.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Our next speaker is Mr. Frank Dumbleton to talk about mathematics. Again, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name's Frank Dumbleton. I live in Lower Macungie Township. I would like to address primarily those board and administration that have been here for 5 or more years. That excludes the 3 board members to the right here, but includes the rest of the board and administration. My concerns date back in time, so that's why it's focused to that group. In 2012, East Penn School District schools had an average of 79.3% students that were advanced or proficient in math. That is according to the Pennsylvania Department of Education website, so that's not my numbers, that's the Department of Education. That's an accomplishment, 79% to be proficient, that's awesome. 7 years later, in 2019, 55.7% of the students were proficient in math. So we went from 80% proficiency in 2012 to 55% in 2019. That was all before COVID hit. So this is not a COVID issue, this is a pre-COVID issue. In 2021, of course, we did have COVID, and currently the 2021 numbers for East Penn students that are proficient in math is 45%. These aren't my numbers. This is what off of the Department of Education, Pennsylvania Department of Education. 45%, if you think about that, that's over 1 out of 2 are not proficient in math. One of our middle schools has a 23.7% proficiency in math. That's less than 1 out of 4 students. Parkland today is at 60% proficiency. And when I say proficiency, I mean proficiency and advanced, those of you that know how that breaks down. So it's both advanced and proficient. Southern Lehigh has a 60% proficiency rate. Why is there such a big difference between East Penn and those other 2 schools? These numbers are right from the PA Department of Education. I'm not editorializing or adding to that. That's just right from their website. I would like to think that the board would want to address these plummeting scores. I went back and looked at the last 3 years of the board's agendas, and there were 60 meetings. You folks have, I commend you for your sacrifice, and there's 60 meetings in the last 3 years. After 10 years of the scores going down, how many times did math appear on the agenda?
Yeah,
Time to wrap. Give me one last closing. It has not appeared on the agenda. Mr. Saul mentioned it in his budget, but math has not appeared. My closing comment, Mr. Chairman, this community voted for board members and administration to educate our students. This is the job of those positions. Teaching math is one of the most basic missions of this school. It's a basic life skill. We do math every day. You know, how many times did you use math today? A 45% proficiency says this board is not meeting those goals.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Our next speaker is Mr. Troy Wilderson to talk about literature and conduct.
Good evening. Name's Troy Wilderson. Mass resident for about the past 20 years or so. Something really concerning came to my attention. There is a book on the Ira Middle School data system. I'm going to pull it up. It is called It's Perfectly Normal. Honestly, there's nothing normal about this book. We are promoting pornography in the middle school. If you really look into this book and see what's illustrated in this book, you'll understand why. And I won't show it because I got a little more class than that. I would like to know why this book is in the middle school data system. Let's see what we got here, because I got all the information this time. Last meeting I have no information. Your school inclusion teacher is saying that it's taking off the library. Well, it's still in the data system, and if it is, why? Because if it's not on the data system, it's not there. So apparently it's still there, even though it's saying it's no longer there, but it won't give a reason when it's coming off or why it's still on there. And the second thing that brought to my attention, and as I always say, I always got information sources that lets me know everything's going on. Why do we have students walking around the school dressed like dogs and cats? This has been going on. This isn't the only school. I thought the school was better than this. My tax dollar money to teach these kids, and we're walking around dressed as dogs and cats, and I've also heard they're dressing up in chains, dog collars, oh, you name it. And another school district, I'm not going to mention them, and I got this information today too, is putting kitty litter boxes in their bathrooms. I hope and pray to God my tax money does not go to the freak show and goes to teaching our schools, and teaching in our schools and teaching our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilderson. Our final requester tonight is Ms. Barbara Tanteros to talk about code of conduct and transgender nonconforming gender.
Yeah, before I start my 3 minutes, I would like to say I live in an area that's very close to the high school, and to hear the children, the band, the teams playing, watching the group tonight as I pulled in, football, soccer, it's really a wonderful sight. And I'm really proud of living in this district. But there are a few things that do concern me, and now I will start my 3 minutes. At the last board meeting I attended on August 8th, I addressed the new revised Code of Conduct, specifically transgender and nonconforming gender. I truly believe in all of your heart of hearts that you know teaching this is not the right thing to do. And we will all be held accountable. How do we conduct ourselves, especially concerning children? The power you have as a school board director and a solicitor has been given to you from above. If you recall, and you may not, when Jesus stood before Pilate, Pilate asked him if he knew the power he had to either crucify him or set him free. And Jesus' answer was, you could have no power unless it had been given to you from above. And the same is true for each of you. To whom much is given, much will be required. And that's why I'm here, because I love you. You may not think I do, but I don't envy you your job. I just plead with you to be strong, courageous, and refuse to go along with this indoctrination and ban the directives that you're getting from these powerful unions and these unelected elitists who are public-funded nonprofits and gender activity organizations to teach these unnatural, distorted ideologies to our children, K through 12, and train teachers how to disseminate the same. The children are being used as pawns, especially the young ones. The youngest most likely don't even know what their favorite color is yet. And they're asked if they want to be a boy or a girl. Hello? Some of them want to be a dinosaur. Some of them want to be a superhero. You just don't do that to children. And I do research, too, as well as certain other people that presented here. And I have in front of me the American College of Pediatrics findings that show
30
that
seconds,
puberty...
Ms. Tanteros.
One more minute, please.
30 seconds.
1 more minute.
We're over 3 minutes already, 30 seconds.
Just like you gave to Mrs. Jackson last meeting. When she asked for 1 minute, you gave it to her.
I'm giving you another 30 seconds. It's already 3.5 minutes.
Anyway, it shows that puberty blockers cause mental illness. They cause permanent, irreversible physical harm and may disrupt mental health. All of these interventions are experimental and very dangerous. There's not one single long-term study to demonstrate the safety or efficacy of puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, surgeries for transgender beliefs. So why would we want to promote such drastic social movement? Many of which leads to suicides, all of which could go under the category of what was presented last meeting under adverse childhood experiences.
Thank you, Ms. Tantero.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes for the August 22nd meeting. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions, comments from the board? Seeing none, Ms. Allen, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Bowen,
Aye.
Ms. Bowman,
Aye.
Mr. Byrd,
Aye.
Mr. Champagne,
Aye.
Mr. Falegi,
Aye.
Mr. Jankowski,
Aye.
Mr. Smith,
Aye.
Dr. Whitney,
Aye.
Dr. Levinson,
Aye.
9 ayes.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Next on the agenda is the district update. Dr. Campbell.
Good evening, thank you. I just wanted to start off, I certainly recognize that the public comment is not an interactive process, but as we did have a community member, Mr. Wilderson, bring forth a question, and it's information I do have the information at hand. I thought I would take a moment just to clarify that earlier this year, I did receive a question, an inquiry from a community member regarding a specific book entitled "It's Perfectly Normal." I checked into all of our school libraries. That book is not in any of our school libraries and has not been for several years. So again, I just wanted to follow up on that. I am also excited to report, as I appreciate Mrs. Jackson shared her experiences as a parent, that we did indeed, we believe that we also had a very positive start to the 22-23 school year. We are proud of the fact that we're in excellent shape in terms of staffing for all positions. And our district transportation over the first several days of school was incredibly smooth as well. And so we're appreciative of our partnership with STA and all of our district employees who helped to make the start of the school year a positive one, most importantly for our kids. I'm also pleased to announce that our high school athletics are off to an outstanding start. Our girls cross-country team, it was the Northampton Invitational Champions. Our boys cross-country team was in 4th place at that same meet, and I believe their first dual meet is tomorrow evening. Our field hockey team is currently 6-0. They're actually ranked number 1 in the nation right now, and so for anyone who's interested to see a really great competition, our Emmaus High School girls field hockey team will be taking on Oak Knoll High School, who's currently ranked number 2 in the nation. That game's coming up on October 1st, so it should be a really great competition between 2 amazing athletic teams. Our football record is 3-0, and I want to point out that both our cheerleaders and our band are doing a phenomenal job at those games as well. Our golf record is 9-5. Our boys soccer team is 5-0, and they just recently experienced their 800th win, which is something, again, that few schools in the state have done. Our girls soccer record is 6-0, our girls tennis is 8-1, and girls volleyball is 5-0. And so, again, whether it's in our classrooms or our athletes and our extracurricular activities, our students are doing a phenomenal job. Speaking of athletics, our high school athletic department is actually interviewing students, high school students, who are interested in becoming the next Hornet mascot. A tremendously big responsibility. So any students who might be interested in that, I encourage you to reach out to Mr. Spengler, our assistant athletic director, to find out more about that position. As I shared with families before, this year there are some important changes to our school lunch prices for the school year. For the latest news, you can check out our East Penn cafeteria news. There's a link directly on our district homepage, and there is information there for families regarding free or reduced lunch application. families must apply this year. That is a little bit different from previous years, but again, eligible families, that service is available. I'd also like to invite the community to join us for the second annual East Penn School District Education Foundation Golf Outing, which is scheduled for October 3rd at Brookside Country Club. Again, a great way to support the East Penn Education Foundation that supports the school district in so many ways. And finally, I just wanted to share with our community that this week we will be sharing a district-wide communication to remind parents and guardians to update their preference for receiving district communication through School Messenger. So specifically, parents can choose to receive a phone call, an email, or a text message anytime we have important information regarding school alerts, closings, or emergencies. And so again, all families, we just encourage you to watch for that information to be sure that we have your updated preferences and information for those school alerts. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Campbell. Any comments or questions from the board? Ms. Bowman?
Yes, I actually want to thank you for addressing information or comments brought up by the public. I really do think it's helpful for the administration to speak to anxieties that parents in our communities have, especially when they're unfounded. And so I was wondering if you could address some of the others. Maybe you didn't because they didn't. So, do we have kitty litter in the bathrooms?
We do not have kitty litter or kitty litter boxes in bathrooms, nor do we have students bringing them to school.
And then the other one, which I know is a longer answer, but I have seen the information about the math scores for the past few months and have been hoping that the administration would put out some information to address that. I can say during my time on the board, I know the administration has been very busy looking at ways to improve reading comprehension in our kids, and we spent, hopefully my memory is correct, but you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I think it's $500,000 on materials to help make sure that our students are better reading prepared. And right before my time on the board, I know the administration spent a lot of time adding STEM classes to the high school curriculum that are still there. Anybody can check out and see the breadth of courses that are offered at the high school. Engineering, it goes well beyond anything that I had offered to me when I was in high school. But I'm wondering if you can speak to those scores and particularly how the way that students were assessed, how that changed right after 2013, which will help to explain the difference in what our schools look like, and also why one middle school might test lower than another middle school.
I will say I don't know if I will necessarily go into all those questions that you just asked, but I am certainly happy to respond in a high-level way. And I will share that our Office of Teaching and Learning, actually for November, for this fall, we have planned a fall data overview for the board and the community. That will include standardized state assessments. When we say standardized state assessments, we're talking about the PSSA, as Mr. Dumbleton referred to earlier. That certainly includes Keystone exams as well. There's another really important piece of data out there referred to as PVOS data, which is growth data. We also have a variety of curriculum-based assessments that we administer that help us to monitor students' growth and progress over the year. I do think that it is, the one piece that I will comment on is over the span of 7 years, the 7-year span that was noted tonight, there was a change in the, at the state level. And again, I'm sure I'm probably not telling some of the community members information they don't already know, just in terms of a change in terms of implementation of PA core standards and a fundamental change in the state assessment itself. I say this information not at all as an excuse, but really just explaining that sometimes there are layers of information beneath beneath what might be initially presented. The other thing I will also share is, information or data, student assessment data is really important in that, like for us, a pivotal piece is what is that data telling us and what are we going to do differently? And so over the course of several years, we have made revisions to our math curriculum. We've actually implemented new math resources, a new math program. And so that has been something that has been implemented over the course of several years. This board knows as well, again, we've actually talked quite a bit about math data over the past several meetings as a result of using ESSER funds to implement math intervention positions at all levels. Actually, this year, those would now be K to 12. And so again, I don't know that I necessarily went into all the details that you asked, but we do have plans later this fall to delve into some of that information. And I think that gives you maybe a high-level overview of how we regularly use data. The other piece that I think is important to share with the public in terms of why we opted to plan our data presentation for November. Yes, preliminary PSSA scores are available. We are waiting to receive the final state averages for the upcoming year, and also to have that PVOS growth data finalized as well, so that when we come to the board, and most importantly, when we come to the public, that we give you the complete picture.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Champagne.
Yeah, Dr. Campbell, correct me if I'm wrong. I do recall in the time that I've been on the board, which is a little over 7 years now, we did approve quite a big expenditure for Ready Math at the elementary school. So when the person in the public says we have not looked at math, I take exception to that. When we spent, I don't remember how many hundreds of thousands of dollars revising the math curriculum at the elementary school level, because you recognized at the time that there was an issue and that we needed to do more. So I don't know if you want to comment on that or not, but it is not accurate to say that we have not invested in math and math curriculum, especially at the lowest levels of the school.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And when I was speaking to the math curriculum revisions and the math resources, you're absolutely right, Mr. Champagne. Ready Math is the program that we use, actually elementary and middle school. So I'm looking to my team just to remind me of the date. I want to say 2016 was a potential implementation of Ready Math, but it was like 2016, 2018, right around that period of time. And yes, there would have been multiple board presentations in which we talked about the need, as well as the costs associated with the change. 2018, thank you.
Any additional comments or questions? Well, I'm just going to make one comment, since we did bring up the math assessment data. Comparing results from 2012 and subsequent to after 2015 is not a fair comparison. 2012 assessments were done under a different standard, a different structure of the test. In 2015, that was the first year that the new state standards and Common Core, et cetera, were implemented, making the test that much harder. And across the board and across the entire state, scores fell in proportion to that difficulty. So, while I don't doubt the veracity of the information that Mr. Dumbleton presented, it's an unfair comparison to compare 2012 data to anything subsequent to 2015. And then my final comment is that I want to know if the Hornet costume is something that I can fit into so I could try it. Okay. All right, if nothing further, we'll move on to the next item, which is personnel. There's only one item. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments or questions from the board? Seeing none, Ms. Allen, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Bowman?
Aye.
Mr. Byrd?
Aye.
Mr. Champagne?
Aye.
Mr. Falegi?
Aye.
Mr. Jankowski?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
No.
Dr. Whitney?
Aye.
Mrs. Bowen?
Aye.
Dr. Levinson?
Aye.
8 ayes, 1 nay.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Next item is business operations. If there are no objections, I'd like to take items A through D together. With that, I'd take a motion.
So moved.
I have a second. Okay, are there any comments or questions on any items A through D? If not, seeing none, Ms. Allen, please call the roll.
Mr. Byrd?
Aye.
Mr. Champagne.
Aye.
Mr. Falegi.
Aye.
Mr. Jankowski.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Dr. Whitney.
Aye.
Mrs. Bowen.
Aye.
Miss Bowman.
Aye.
Dr. Levinson.
Aye.
9 ayes.
Thank you. Next item is curriculum. There is one item on educational conferences. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments or questions? Seeing none, Ms. Allen, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Champagne.
Aye.
Mr. Falegi.
Aye.
Mr. Jankowski.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Dr. Whitney.
Aye.
Mrs. Bowen.
Aye.
Miss Bowman.
Aye.
Mr. Byrd.
Aye.
Dr. Levinson.
Aye.
9 ayes.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Our next item on the agenda is policy. I don't believe there are any updates since our last reading. This is the third reading. With no updates, I may have a motion to adopt the current drafts.
So moved. Second.
Any comments or questions? Seeing none, Ms. Allen, you call the roll?
Mr. Falegi.
Aye.
Mr. Jankowski.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Dr. Whitney.
Aye.
Mrs. Bowen.
Aye.
Miss Bowman.
Aye.
Mr. Byrd.
Aye.
Mr. Champagne.
Aye.
Dr. Levinson.
Aye.
9 ayes.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Next item is legislation for the 2023 PSBA slate of candidates. The slate of candidates is as shown in the agenda. One candidate for president-elect, one for vice president, one for Section E2 advisor, and two for PSBA insurance trustees. We have the same number of candidates as spots. If there are no objections, I'd like to accept that slate and have us vote on that group. May I have a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Any comments or questions? Mr. Champagne.
Yes, I would just like to add that we approved this slate of candidates up at LCTI. David Hine, who is the current president of PSBA, knows Michael Gossert and Allison Mathis and speaks highly of them, and also has had interface with the other candidates for Section E2 advisor and insurance trustees. And we approved those candidates unanimously. If anybody just wanted to know how we looked at the candidates based on information and feedback we got from David Hine, who's also the board president up at Parkland.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Champagne, for that information. Any additional?
Dr. Levinson, actually, if I could add, I serve on a board with Mike Gossert. He's the chair of the Pennsylvania School District Liquid Asset Fund, a fund in which I serve on the board. He's the chair presently. Exactly what Mr. Champagne said. He's got great character, runs a very good meeting. I think he'll do a fantastic job for PSBA.
Okay. Thank you for that, Mr. Saul. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, Ms. Allen, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Jankowski.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Dr. Whitney.
Aye.
Mrs. Bowen.
Aye.
Miss Bowman.
Aye.
Mr. Byrd.
Aye.
Mr. Champagne.
Aye.
Mr. Falegi.
Aye.
Dr. Levinson.
Aye.
9 ayes.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Moving on to other educational entities, we have one report tonight from LCTI. Mr. Champagne.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Levinson. We held a meeting of the Joint Operating Committee on Wednesday, August 24th. It was a hybrid event. In highlights of the meeting, LCTI was awarded the Southern Regional Education Board 2022 Paysitter Award, and this award recognized the implementation of the Southern Regional Education Board's Making Schools Work Better program in order to meet certain goals related to graduation rates, readiness for careers, college, and credential attainment. So it was a fairly prestigious award. Something also that was announced at the last meeting, and it's really neat, they finally had, again, some 2022 Skills USA National winners. I think Dr. Campbell may have mentioned this earlier. There were 3 winners at the Atlanta competition. Landon Rex won first place from Northwestern Lehigh for collision damage appraisal. Brandon Arnold was second place from Northern Lehigh. Marine Service Technology, and Cody Works from Emmaus High School placed third in heavy equipment operations. Another positive thing is that LCTI was able to, from the Pennsylvania Department of Education, qualify for the community eligibility provision, which provides a free breakfast and lunch for all students at LCTI. And this was a big win for us up at the LCTI, given the makeup of the demographics of that school. They also announced that they have signed an MOU with Lehigh Valley Health Network to provide behavioral health services similar to what we have in this district for the current academic year. There will also be showcase tours of LCTI for 8th and 9th graders starting on October 17th, running through the 28th. And I believe the open house is at the end of that. I don't know if I got that right. I don't know who was at the meeting. Alan, I don't know if you remember that, but I think the open house up at LCTI is toward the end of that as well. Public relations, they are presenting new marketing materials for both the high school and adult education programs. A stronger marketing effort will be toward English second language students, where that's a demographic that they hope to make some inroads in. And finally, on enrollment, there are, as of August 24th, there were 2,308 students at LCTI this year. I think that's roughly up 200 from last year. And there are 311 students from East Penn who are attending LCTI. They also talked about the academic center's 9th grade program has been a success. I think they're increasing the number of sections from 2 to 3 this coming year, so more students are taking advantage of going all 4 years for their academics at LCTI. The animal science program that they initiated this year was fully subscribed, which is no surprise. And then they are continuing with some of their virtual CTE courses, and that is my report. If Alan, I think, was there, I don't know, Josh and Adam didn't make it, so if you have anything else, Alan, you want to add?
Just one other thing I want to add. There was one comment made about some of the classes. We've lost a lot of students in some classes, which are math related. And I think that's one thing we have to do. We had to drop one CNC class instructor because we didn't have enough students taking those classes. So that's something that the LCTI wants to work on. And also, we need help from our districts to make sure the young people are able to do math and are not afraid to take these classes.
That's a good point.
That's something that really needs to be worked on.
Yeah, that's across the board. A lot of the precision machining and other advanced labs, the students are afraid of enrolling in those classes because of the math component. But that's not an East Penn problem. It's an across-the-board problem.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Champagne. And Mr. Byrd, any further questions or comments? Well, I'd just like to add that there are indeed some spectacular things going on at LCTI, and I'm proud to represent East Penn as part of the JOC. I also wanted to acknowledge that the new executive director, Dr. Greenewalt, that was her first meeting that she conducted as director, and so we were very pleased to have her in charge, as they say. Moving on to announcements, there were 2 executive sessions held since our last meeting. One was on September 8th on the topic of personnel. Tonight's executive session was held to discuss real estate and confidential matters. Our next board meeting is scheduled for Monday, September 26th, here in the boardroom at 7:30 p.m. With no further business, I'd like to get a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Objections? Abstentions? None? Meeting is adjourned. See you in 2 weeks.